In this video, I'm going to show you how you can create assessments where there are optional questions. So let's create a new assessment. Assessment code, just an example code. Let's say there's 6 questions in this exam, but only 4 have to be answered. Yeah, so if that is the case, you still have to type in 6 questions to mark. Subcategories, let's say there's 3 subcategories. And student IDs, I'll just manually add some example ones. So we have 5 students in there, and these are the student IDs. So in the subcategory allocation, this is where it is a bit different from a standard exam. So we have our 6 questions. Let's say every question carries 10 marks. So let's say 10, set as a maximum for all questions. But because students only have to answer 6, right, the maximum mark that can be achieved for this exam won't be 60, as it shows here, it will be 40. Right? So you have to adjust the maximum mark to 40. And then you do your subcategory allocation. Yeah, let's say a very easy allocation. So questions 1 and 2 are subcategory 1. Let's say this is, again, physiology, anatomy, and exercise. Oops, sorry. Exercise. So when it comes to marking, move on to the marking table. So now, let's say student 1 or student A, student A hasn't attempted questions 1 and 2. So you have to tell INDAF that, because you can't just type in a 0, because a 0 could be tried the question but didn't achieve any marks there, right? So a non-attempted question is coded as an N, and you can see how these cells go gray. Okay, so that is, let's say that is student 1. And let's say student 2 attempted the first question but didn't do the second one, didn't do the third one, but then did the remaining ones. Yeah, and if you now preview the report, you can see which questions were attempted and which ones weren't attempted indirectly, really, because let's go back to the subcategory allocation. So it was questions 1, 2, one subcategory, questions 3, 4, the next one, questions 5, 6, the final one. So if you look at the first student, didn't attempt questions 1 and 2. So if you go and preview the report, you can see that the physiology subcategory, there's no mark given, no percentage given, because no question selected in this subcategory. And for the other ones, the marks are calculated just normally. Yeah, so there was 20 questions or 20 marks to be gained in anatomy and 20 in exercise. So these marks are out of 20. It also does the correct calculations for student 2, because this student has only attempted 1 question for subcategory 1, but not the second one, and has only attempted 1 question for subcategory 2, question 4, but not question 3. So if I preview the report of that student, you can see that that student has a mark for every subcategory, but in the physiology subcategory, they only attempt the questions worth 10 marks. Yeah, so it's the percentage is based on out of 10. Same for anatomy, but for exercise, they attempted all questions associated with that subcategory. So this is what you have to do if you have optional questions. The only difference to the normal marking is that you have to adjust your max mark here. And that in the marking table, you have to code as N, right? So if you don't do that, so let's say you just go and type in zeros, then you can see that there's no preview report button coming up. So it really detects how many questions have been answered and how many N's do you have.